I didn't have much of a life. I was a slave. Everything I did was about my master. I spent all of my time waiting for him to call me and then do whatever he wanted. If he woke up in the middle of the night, I had to be awake. I was there for every event, every meal, every conversation, waiting and serving. And I knew that I could never say anything about what I saw or heard either, because he would have had me killed and replaced without a second thought. He acted like I didn't even exist until he wanted something. My name is Malchus, but I'm not sure my master knew it. I didn't have it so bad, though. I was the slave of the high priest. He had wealth and power, and that did make my situation a little better than most. I didn't have to work in the fields like many. Sometimes, when things were going well for him, I would be allowed some of the food left on the plates. But mostly, I got just enough to still be hungry after my meal. I heard the high priest speak, and he was so confident. He knew the scriptures so well. I believed whatever he said, and everybody did what he said. That was until that teacher started getting a following. At first, the high priest just ignored him. Then the high priest explained how he had to be a heretic. The high priest told us that everything he said was blasphemous. The other priests believed him. I believed him. All those miracles were just tricks of the devil to fool us. Then that Jesus came to Jerusalem at Passover, and everybody was talking about him. He rode into town on a donkey, and everyone was shouting, "Hosanna!" and "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." It wasn't right, and the high priest told him so. My chest was hot with anger because he wouldn't listen. This Jesus defied my master. He didn't stop the crowds at all. That's when the high priest decided that he needed to stop Jesus, and all the priests agreed. I silently listened to them talk. I believed what the high priest said, too. We were all going to die because of the things Jesus said. So Jesus should die instead to save us. They made a secret plan for the very next night. On Thursday, everything was set. I was glad that I got to go along to the garden, but I was still anxious. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff and being excited by the view, but afraid of falling. I wanted to be there with my master, and everything was going as planned. One of the disciples showed us who he was by kissing him. I had never seen him up close before. He didn't look anything like I imagined. I thought he might look like King Saul, big and strong and handsome. He was just normal. He wasn't special at all. We all rushed up, and I was right beside the high priest when one of his disciples swung his sword at my head. He cut off my ear. That hurt. I reached up and covered my ear and could feel the warm, sticky blood in my hand. The sting reminded me of when I was a child and my mother would pinch my ear when I was being disobedient. The sting! He cut off my ear! I looked over and the high priest had stepped away from me. His face was twisted in disgust. He seemed more concerned about getting my blood on his robe than about how I was hurt. But Jesus, he looked right in my eyes. His eyes were dark and clear, and he saw me. It was a look I hadn't seen in a long time, since I saw it in the eyes of my mother. Jesus shouted, "Stop! No more of this!" Then he reached up and gently moved my hand away from my head. He was still looking in my eyes when he touched me, and the pain stopped. I reached up, frightened to touch my disfigurement, but my ear was there. I didn't even see him pick up the part that had fallen to the ground. He healed my ear. But that didn't stop the priest or the guards, though. They took Jesus back to the high priest's house. As Jesus was marched between armed men, my master glided with his chin high in triumph. I didn't stay beside my master now. I was at the back and felt dizzy. I felt like I was somewhere else, but my ear was healed. When we got back, all the other priests were waiting for us. This was the moment they had waited for. They spoke hurriedly and their voices were high-pitched. They were anxious to carry out their plan to see that Jesus died. I remembered all that I had heard, and I knew it had to be done, but he'd healed my ear. Why was I now wishing I wasn't there? Now my chest was tight, my stomach ached. I was there when they covered his head to hide their evil, and the priest punched and beat Jesus and laughed. They thought it was funny and made jokes about Jesus being God. He couldn't be God, could he? But he did heal my ear. I listened to the trial. I knew that it was all lies. I knew that the high priest had paid people to make up stories that made Jesus sound crazy, that made Jesus look like a liar. They accused him of things he didn't do or say. I wanted to look at him, but I was afraid. He had healed my ear. Who could heal my ear except God? I was there when Pilate had Jesus whipped. I was beside my master, and I closed my eyes. But the sound drew a clear picture in my mind. I reached up and touched my ear. It was warm and soft. It didn't hurt at all, even though just a few hours before it had been cut off completely. I could hear the cords hiss through the air and each crack of the whip with my ear. I followed along as we went to the place of the skull, but I looked at the ground the whole time. I heard all those people that just a few days ago called Jesus King, and now they were cursing at him. Jesus winced once when spit hit his cheek and dripped down the side of his face. My master was smiling, that smile the high priest had when things were going well. But I didn't want to be any part. I jumped a little every time the hammer strike rang in my ear. Jesus was going to die, but he had healed my ear. I still looked at the ground as Jesus hung on the cross. He had taken my pain away, but now I was feeling pain because of his suffering. The high priest seemed pleased, and my ears heard the crowd mocking Jesus. I heard one of the priests say, "He saved others, but he can't save himself." And I reached up and touched my ear again. I looked up when the sky turned black, though. It was a darkness that made me feel all alone. I was scared. I remembered as a child, waking in the night, looking in the darkness of the room, how it terrified me. Was God going to destroy us all? I heard Jesus cry out, then he died, even though just a few hours before he had healed my ear. My ear clearly heard the centurion say, "Truly, this is the Son of God." I knew it too. I knew that the man that healed my ear could heal my soul. I knew that the man my master had killed was truly my master. I would remain a slave of the high priest, but I was freed. Everything I did now was for my new master, because he healed my ear.